Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here.
Hello, and welcome back to the Love Pod, beautiful people. I'm your host, Julia, and today's conversation is around a topic that comes up a lot on this show. And it's something that we were created for as human and spiritual beings, yet something many of us feel that perhaps we're missing in our lives, at least to the degree we long for it, and that's connection. Clarissa Constantine is the founder of Parents Feed Connection and works with parents, professionals, and communities, helping families and people build authentic relationships rooted in safety, understanding, and respect. Her work is practical and organic. There's no fixing, no forcing, just a real invitation back into listening, observing, and creating safe spaces, for connection to grow. And we're going to dive into all of this and more on today's show. Clarissa, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to explore this topic with you today. Welcome to the Love Pod.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be with you today.
So, for those, including myself, meeting you for the first time, I would love to just take a step back and maybe perhaps you could share a little bit about your story and your background and what called you into this work of connection today.
There are some folks who say take your mess and turn it into your message, and that couldn't be any more true than for me. And many people ask me, how is it that you started an organization geared around families and teenagers when you don't even have kids of your own, or you
Mm-hmm.
have kids yourself? Well, I was the teenager in a challenged relationship with my mom.
Mm.
We started disconnecting in my early teenage years. Well, really probably mid to later is when it really became more noticeable. I didn't feel that she understood me. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel like my voice mattered. Couldn't wait to get out of the house. Went 1,500 miles away for college, and pretty much never went back from there.
Okay.
And we never reconnected as adults. And what I said at her services, she passed a little over 6 years ago now. And what I said at her memorial was, I never questioned that she loved me. I never questioned
Mm.
that she wanted what was best for me.
Mm.
But we fell into what I can now see in retrospect was a highly dysfunctional pattern of each of us trying to prove so wholeheartedly that what we each thought was best for me, pardon me, because of course her vision of what was best for me and my vision of what was best for me didn't always line up. And we fell into this pattern of each of us trying so hard to prove that what we thought was best for me was best for me,
Mm.
that we, I think, lost the ability to be kind. I think we we lost the ability to meet each other where we were. um, I spent a lot of years being really angry
Mm.
and frustrated and resentful that she wasn't the mom I wish she could be, that she couldn't let me be me, that
Yeah.
she um, couldn't just honor who I was as a human instead of what she felt I should or could or ought to be. And so it was challenging. There's been a lot of healing. There's been a lot of forgiveness of her and of myself since she passed a little over 6 years ago. I like to say we have a much better relationship now that she doesn't have the human encumbrances and the human
Mm.
emotion and the human ego. I'm the only one left with that. She doesn't have that anymore. so um so that's kind of the backstory. I'm also no stranger, thankfully not personally, but to people very close to me, with teenagers navigating some pretty profound mental health challenges. People close to me have navigated suicidal ideation. I'm grateful that I haven't lost anyone very close to me to suicide, but on top of that, I also in college fell into a career as a test prep coach. So, for anybody listening beyond the borders of the US, here in the United States, we've got two primary exams that students need to consider in the college admissions process, the SAT and the ACT. And I fell into what turned into a career, coaching kids to prep for these tests in the college
Okay.
admissions process. And so I've worked with tens of thousands of young adults in the high school to college realm. I also help students who are looking to go to grad school, whether they're currently college students or adults or they've been in the military and then they finished their undergrad, and now that they're retiring, or maybe they haven't even retired from the military, they want to go on to grad school. I've worked with a lot of folks in that next step process, and so I've just had a chance to really get to know a lot of families in a really high pressure environment, a really intense time of young people's lives. And so that's kind of the backstory.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, and what an important role to play. Like you say, like that tween teen years is such an important time of their life. Like it's a turning point. And from what they choose from there, the decisions they make can, play into the rest of their lives. So it's really nice that they have a role model like you to really help with that. And, I'm just thinking about when you said suicide. Thank God that you haven't lost to anyone to that. But it's like, I'm just thinking for any reason that someone would want to leave these human bodies, it's probably because they feel a lack of connection, right? So this is truly such an important, human need that we have here in this realm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also thank you so much for, did you want to add anything to that?
I was going to say it only takes one person to have a connection with somebody else to help lessen some of those suicidal thoughts. Now I'm not a mental health specialist. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a therapist. There's a lot that goes into navigating depression and suicidal ideation and whatnot. And so let me be clear that this is not a panacea, but it is a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
A
sure.
big piece.
Yeah.
An important piece.
Oh,
But a
absolutely.
piece.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in even just going back to you sharing your story of, your relationship with your mother for being an impetus to like, dive deeper into this work and perhaps ask the questions, why were we not close growing up? And I can relate so much to this because I have the exact same relationship with my mom. And, sometimes there could be, karmic reasons and a whole bunch of different reasons, but it's really interesting too. Like I'm curious to know your experience because for me growing up, I wasn't really as aware as I am today. Like I was just thinking it's normal that as a teen you rebel from your parents and you speak to them a certain way. And I didn't know any better. Like I wasn't seeking that connection piece that was lacking between us. I kind of just, I was not so, tapped in, I guess you could say. And so I'm curious to know for you is like, did you always know that, with your relationship with your mother, that there was something missing, that you wanted to be closer to her, that, or you just didn't know how? Or was it later on kind of when you left home thinking like, oh, like I kind of, I would like, yeah.
I definitely knew.
Okay.
I also will say I believe that my mother navigated some pretty challenging things as a young person herself, and in her generation, mental health wasn't like addressing mental health challenges wasn't a thing. She was very against going and getting support. That I believe may have helped her, A, for traumatic situations that she navigated, but B, I also believe there may have been some undiagnosed mental challenges that take the trauma out. I think there was some mental health challenges that she navigated. And so I will say I do believe she did the best that she could. I do believe she did the best that she knew how with what she knew and with the tools that she had. But yeah, I remember looking at my friends who, as I recall, had what I perceived as very close relationships with their moms, where they felt like they genuinely could talk to their moms about anything. And there definitely always felt like there was a wall. And I think part of that is because my mom had to put that wall up out of self-preservation, you know, and it was her own protection, but it was pretty damn impermeable. And it was I definitely felt it as a kid. I also like she always told me, you feel too much, you feel too big, and I was like, how exactly? Like, I feel what I feel. I'm a very emotional person. I'm a very effusive person. God bless the people around me who navigate some of my swings, and we're not just talking hormonal swings, because we all know those are a thing too. But I feel big, and I feel big for my people. Yeah. And I remember her going, you have to figure out how to care, like how to care less about the things you care about. And I remember going like, how exactly do you do that? Like it's not a light switch. I can't like turn it off. And I also never felt like it was a dimmer switch. Like how do you look at somebody you care about who's hurting and care less about it? Or I mean, I'm an animal lover. Like I have 2 rescue dogs. Like I can't watch the ASPCA commercials. Like I just can't do it. You know what I mean? And so I definitely fall into that. Like highly sensitive category, and I'm not sure that she understood what that was. And so, woof, yeah, we had our challenges.
Yeah. And I think you just said it right there. Like maybe she didn't understand, what you were going through, and that's why she had a hard time relating. And I believe every parent out there is doing the best, with the tools that they have at the time. But you bringing this up makes me think about navigating big emotions, especially for sensitive people like yourself who feel big emotions often, and it's such a timely conversation too, because we're currently going through conscious night weaning with my daughter. And a big part of that is feeling big emotions and holding space for them. And I'm learning so much throughout that process. But, I also realize if somebody cannot be comfortable with their own emotions, how can they accept another person who they love, let alone their children's? It's really
Yeah.
difficult. And if they're not taught how to do that from their own parents, then it even all the more difficult, right? And some people, like some
100%.
parents are not, or just I don't want to say parents, but people and naturally are able to just hold space for emotions. We're all different, but a lot of the times if you're not taught, like I'm just thinking, why was my mom not close to me? Like the way that we act, I also felt like I couldn't go to my mom, even for the most intimate girl things or about boys. Like I would go to my dad first. And to me, that just felt weird because all my girlfriends would go to their moms. And I was questioning, like, why don't I have that relationship with my mom? But then when I think about my grandmother, they also were not super close. So sometimes we just don't know any better, right? We're just doing what our
100%.
parents did with us. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But then whenever you have someone who's curious and wanting to dig a little bit deeper and say, hey, like I don't want to suppress these big emotions and I want to feel big. I mean, that's who I am. This is a version of me that is authentic and it feels, liberating to feel and to not hide. And so, I'm really curious to know, you know, this connection that you talk about, like what do you actually mean? Like how is it different from communication or closeness? What does connection mean
Sure.
to you?
Sure. So, can I take a little circuitous route to
Sure.
get there?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely. You take your time.
um, because the answer to that question is actually rooted in how parent twin connection came to be in the first place.
Please, yeah,
So
please go ahead.
the older I got, the more aware I became of, like, I love doing the coaching that I do, the test prep. I know I'm making an impact on kids' lives, and I make a comfortable living doing it. But I was getting bored, frankly, and I kind of started feeling this calling. It sounds totally cliche, but it was like, I know that I could make a bigger impact. What is it? And however long ago it was, friends of ours came to, well, a female friend of a couple that my husband and I are close with, came to me, and she started sharing some things that I never would have guessed were going on within her family. Some really significant challenges she was facing with one of her kiddos making every decision you don't want your kiddo making. And the phrase that she said to me was, I just wish I had other parents to talk to.
Mm.
And Julia, when I tell you, like, some people would call that a God moment, some people, like, I felt literally chills head to toe. And after the immediacy of what she was sharing with me was done, I kind of went home and it simmered for a bit. And I reached out to her a little bit later and I was like, hey, you said something that was like a lightning bolt for me. And I'd like to dig a little bit. Can you help me with this? And I said, when you said, I just wish I had other parents to talk to, what did you mean? Because again, I don't have kids. So I can look at this from like the next level out as like, honorary auntie, or, I've got some biological, nieces and nephews and whatnot. But like, I can look on the outside and guess at what I think you meant. But what did you mean?
Right.
And really what it boiled down to was twofold. And again, this is part and parcel of connection. She said, number one, I wish I had a place that I could go to talk to other parents where they weren't going to judge me or my child for the decisions that my child is making. Because she's like, by my child, like, 15, 16-year-old standards, they're really cool decisions. By adult standards, they're really dumb decisions. But she's like, I just want a place where I could talk about just the real stuff and not worry about them thinking I'm a rotten mom or I have a rotten kid or anything like that. But secondly, she said, she said, I wish I had a place to go to find the people who can help me help my kid. Because she had been to the school, she'd been to the principal, the guidance counselor, she'd been to the pediatrician, all the logical first places to go, and nobody could give her actionable insight about what she could do to help her family. So that's actually how Parent Tween Connection was born. And so then I was like, connection, connection, connection kind of kept like rattling around in my brain. And I was at a coaching workshop at one point where they were helping us really dive into our values and what was important and what was driving us in the mission that we were trying to fulfill. And they recommended that we find a 5 or 7 letter word that was important to us. So I found a 10-letter word because, I'm still the recovering overachiever, perfectionist type A personality. And so I took the word connection, and I literally sat down and I journaled, and I had this like really long conversation with myself. And I was like, why is it that in my coaching experience, high school students will often feel more comfortable talking to me initially, or perhaps, period, more comfortable talking to me than they do talking to their own parents? Much like you said, like you never felt like you could go talk to your mom. Much as I also went to my dad on a lot of things more readily than to my mother. And I was like, what is it that I'm able to present, or that in a close parent-teen relationship that they're able to give, that I feel like my mom and I didn't have? And so that's where the concepts of what I call the foundations of connection come from. Some of them overlap into communication, rather, as you were asking. But really, it's a lot about how we show up in the world to set the stage before words are even spoken. So if you want, we can kind of run through them and have conversations about those pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I just want to say a thought that's coming to my mind when you talk
Sure.
about why we connect to certain individuals over others. Like to me, I think a big piece is like full acceptance and non-judgment. And I know that might be one of your foundations, because when you can express yourself and not feel like somebody's judging you, like it's just you're able to have an instant connection, right? Because you feel free to just say what's on your heart and what's on your mind. And just like your friend came to you and saying, hey, like I want a space where I can share what's going on in my life. And that's not always rainbow and butterflies. That's so normal in every family. But like I could totally understand, perhaps on Facebook, you would have some nasty comments. So like, a safe place is so, so important. And that's so important for families to, have that community and that connection. So yeah, I would love to dive into these foundations.
Sure. So, and for anybody tuning in, if you want to download them, Julia, I'm happy to make sure you've got my website.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
do have them as a free download, just like a PDF that you can hang on the fridge, put on your bulletin board, whatever you have at home.
Awesome.
So the first C is create a safe space or create a safe place. And it's interesting because when I first started exploring these, I actually went to the Book of Face, as it were, and said, hey, what does this mean to you? And the overwhelming response I got from people in our generation was, I don't know, I've never had one.
Wow. Wow.
And so, right, I think this has a lot to do with our language and, again, the way we show up in the world. So, let's talk politics. Like, let's just dive right in, okay? Politics, at least in North America, are incredibly divisive right now. Whichever side you're on, the other side's morons. The other side's, you can't fathom how they believe what they believe, because it's so the polar opposite, right? And so how are we talking about that in our families? On the one hand, we're teaching our kids values, as we should, and the way that you believe politically, or let's also talk religion, right? There are certain behaviors that are based in religion or morality that we want to teach our kids. Totally good. How do we ride the line between teaching our kids the values that we want to raise them with and living the values that we also want to raise them with, right? Like, be a kind person. Are you being a kind person in the way that you speak about people who believe differently than you? And that's a challenge sometimes. Again, I'm going to throw terms out, right? They're pejorative terms. I'm not going to actually say them because there are certain things that just won't leave my mouth. But how do you refer to people in the LGBTQIA community? How do you refer to somebody who becomes pregnant out of wedlock? How do you refer to the leader of your town, the PTA, the state, your governor, your president, your prime minister, whoever it is? What language are you using to refer to them? And is that language that you're comfortable with your kids using in their world, right? Because, as an example, if you are using pejorative terms related to the LGBTQIA community, and you have a young person in your world who is questioning their identity, questioning their sexuality, if they are hearing pejorative terms around the home, that is lessening their feeling of safety about being who they are. And again, I'm not taking sides on telling you what anybody to believe, whatever, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying, be aware of your language. I remember very clearly when I was 12 or 13 years old, a friend of my mom's had a daughter who was, I don't know, easily 6 or 8 years older than I, who became pregnant out of wedlock. And I very clearly remember my mother looking at me and going, "Don't you ever bring that kind of shame upon our family." Clearly, my mother wanted me to wait for marriage. And clearly, if I had ever ended up pregnant out of wedlock, she would not have been the first person I went to. Because of that, I to this day, I can remember where we were sitting in the car in the front yard or the driveway at her friend's home. That was one moment that cut connection, that told me she was not a safe place for me to go. So those kinds of things. I have my best friend doesn't even use she has 2 boys who are teenagers. She doesn't use the term wife with them. She uses the term partner with them. And she has since they were little, because in her home, it is important to her for her boys to know that she will welcome whomever they choose as a partner into her family. And she recognized even when they were young, she's like, I don't know where they're going to go. I could, they both had a variation of, masculine and feminine tendencies. She's like, who am I to say, like, to predict whether they're going to be happier with a man or a woman or whatever. And of course, today we have like even non-binary conversations and such. So since they were little, she was just like, yeah, if you ever have a partner when you grow up, those types of things like aren't setting them up for the expectation that they have to marry a woman. That's important in her family. Right? So it's those kinds of things of like paying attention to the way that we show up in the world and the way that we talk about other people. Like, what if your kid ends up in that situation? That one statement that my mother made cut connection. Now, that wasn't the only thing. It's not like connection was completely severed at that point. But if you think of it as like a quilt or like a weaving, right? There was one thread that was cut. So paying attention to the way that we talk about the people around us is important, because we don't know what's going to be important to our kids as they grow up.
Absolutely. And walking your talk too, like you say, like you can't just say one thing and do another. You need to, and the word that came to me when you were explaining that was embodiment, like really embodying and behaving in the way that you're wanting to teach and preach to your children, it's so important. Yeah. I love that
It's
creating.
like
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
it's the opposite of do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
Do as I do.
Do as I do, exactly. And kids, like as a new mom too, kids are such sponges. Like they are like little parrots, and it doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. They are going to do what you do. That's how they learn. Like they'll mirror you. They are our mirrors, And
Well, and a lot of parents think that when the kids get up, like you were saying, like you feel like it's normal to rebel, it's normal to push away, and that is normal, because when kids start individuating in those middle school years and they start identifying their own identities, a lot of parents are like, my kids don't listen to me. No, your kids don't obey you. They don't do as you tell them, in the same way they may have when they were little.
Totally.
But they're still paying attention.
Totally.
They are absolutely still paying attention.
Always. And I want to touch upon that. I mean, my daughter is nowhere near a teen yet, but I believe those years do not have to be hard. Like you say, the individuation process is normal, but we don't need to normalize the rebellious behavior and all this. I believe that if a child or a teenager really feels safe, and that connection communication piece is a safe place to go to with their parent, then they will come to them about everything, whether it's something good or bad that happened. And I also believe it's the same for the terrible twos. Everybody keeps telling us to watch out for the terrible twos, and we're like, we're not really worried about it, because we also know, I think Louise Hay wrote about this in one of her books, everything that's lashing out and happening during that time is just unresolved behavior and healing that still needs to happen in the parent anyways. So they don't really need to be these terrible 2 years. Anything that's coming out of them is things that need to be healed in us still, right? So it's this idea that we have like, oh, this behavior is normal, but it really doesn't have to be that way.
Well, and beware, it's the threes. There is also the aspect that they're learning and they're going to test boundaries.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
they're, I've got a 3-year-old in my world who I understand sometimes why some species eat their young, but that's a different conversation. So I'm not the early childhood specialist. I definitely jam more with the older kids.
Older ones, yeah.
So then the O is observe. And, a lot of times this is about observing your own reactions, observing the engagement, observing, behavior is a symptom, number one. And so, you've got your kid coming in, slamming the door. Don't slam that door is a really easy response, right? Okay, but really, is the door slamming the problem, or is the door slamming the result of something else?
Right.
And so a lot of times it's really easy, and this is also super easy if you are partnered up as an adult. It's really easy to look at the other person and just be like, dude, what's wrong with you today? And come across in a very accusatory fashion, right? Guilty on both the giving and receiving end. But the observing is look for patterns. Look for patterns of behavior, look for patterns of engagement. Something like, again, if we're talking teenagers, hey, I noticed that, like, this week, you've had a harder time waking up in the mornings. Are you staying up later at night? Like, are you having a hard time with school? What's going on? Right? And so observe is the first step that then leads to another C down the road, which is curiosity and challenging truths. But, like, you have to observe what's going on first and look for patterns and go, okay, what's changing? Is their manner of dress changing? Are their sleep patterns changing? Are their eating patterns changing? Now, some of that's biological. More sleep and more food intake means a growth spurt is likely coming, or could mean that a growth spurt is coming, right? So that just could purely be a physiological thing. But if you notice that there's less food being eaten, or maybe there's, I don't know, there's all kinds of different behavioral changes that we could look at that could indicate challenges with healthy eating or challenges with substance use or abuse. Like, again, there's a litany of things, but paying attention to behavior changes is really, or behavioral patterns is really where observing falls in. And not just watching, but listening and smelling. Sometimes teenagers don't smell the greatest. Sometimes we have hygiene conversations that we need to have, right? Because, we're not putting them in the bathtub anymore and bathing them like we did when they were 2 or 3, perhaps, right? So watching for patterns like that, you just, and observing and not kind of being patient. And not necessarily jumping in and being like, I noticed blah, and like jumping right down their throat about something. You know? I mean, if it's egregious and it needs to be addressed, I'm not saying don't, but I'm saying, and if you can document them, and then you can come back to them and be like, look, I've noticed that 4 out of the last 5 nights, XYZ has happened, and I'm kind of concerned. What's going on? Is there something going on? Or even, if there's something that you need to talk about, I'm here to listen. Something like that.
Yeah, I love that as well. Because you're not approaching it from accusatory fashion, like you said. And I think that's the key point. It's like you're not reacting, you're observing, you're watching, you're listening. And then, over time, you're opening up the conversation to inviting them to maybe share more perhaps about what's going on. And that even ties back to Foundation 1, because if they feel that if that space safe created, then they're going to want to share more because they feel safe to do so. I love that.
Exactly. And then the first N, as you were talking about earlier, is actually non-judgment, which also ties into creating a safe space. And
for sure.
we create the safe space by having the non-judgment preemptively or as a foundation. But then when they do come to us, it is imperative that we don't react, right? Yeah, your kid comes to you and says, Mom, I think I'm pregnant. There is going to be all kind of emotion.
Been there.
Right?
Yeah.
There's going to be an awful lot on both sides, right?
For sure.
Remember, number one, as the parent, it is likely that this has been on your kid's mind for a while. And that's just one example, right? But it's likely that it's been on your kid's mind for a while. And perhaps that is what has led to some of the behavioral changes that you can observe. But if you fly off the handle, what the heck, how could you, da 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 da, and you turn into that accusatory fashion, then you're going to cut the connection. If we're in a situation where it is something big like that, what's done is done. Our responsibility as the adults in young people's lives, if they're coming to us, is to be the support. They need us to be the support. They need us to be the rational ones. We are the ones with the fully formed frontal lobes, after all.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So for somebody who is just like reactivity is just part of their personality and maybe it's just been going on and on part of their everyday life, like what would be one piece of, advice that you can offer a parent perhaps that is so used to reacting to perhaps not react in a situation where they would be want to, especially something super big that their child is coming to them about. What's one thing they could do
Um,
to perhaps take a step back and take a breath?
Zip it. That's actually the next foundation, which is nod and
Okay.
smile.
Okay.
Like, you have to bite your tongue. Um, and how do we do that? Because that's easier said than done, right? This is where mindfulness and therapy, I think, are really important, right? To your point of mirrors, I have a challenge with the idea of reactivity as just part of your personality. If it is, and you recognize that it's not the healthiest way for you to approach things or for your relationships, get help learning how to fix it.
Mm.
Is it that you have no patience? Well, how do we work to develop patience? Is it that you're so on edge because of all of the demands in your life? How do we take some of those demands away? Right? And there's so many ways that we could go with that, right?
Yeah.
But it is imperative with young people, that with teenagers especially, that we nod and smile and let them keep talking, because you'll cut that connection if you dive right in and attack, because that's how it's going to be received, is that it's an attack.
Totally. And I think parents also need to realize, like you said, the first step is the awareness that you behave in a certain way. And then the second thing is the intention of wanting to change. Because, changing and cultivating closer connection and relationship with your children, it may be uncomfortable at first, because you're going to be switching some patterns or some routines in the way that you behave with them. And like you say, biting your tongue when you want to just spit something out of your mouth that's on your mind to tell them because you think you know better. It may be really difficult, and then in the long run, it may be totally worth it.
100%. 100%. But the nod and smile is critical for a couple of reasons. Number one, physiologically, the human brain isn't fully formed until we're at least in our mid-20s, and some studies are saying that it may even be later than that. And
For
the
adults, you
brain
mean?
forms, yeah, for humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. The human brain forms from the back to the front. So it goes from like the real basal, like, animalistic tendencies in the base stem of the brain all the way up. The prefrontal cortex, which is at the front of the brain, right behind your forehead, is what's responsible for higher level thinking and executive function and rational decision making, which is why teenagers suck at many of those things. And so if that really isn't fully online until we are mid-20s, and you have a 15 or 16 or 17-year-old coming to you as the adult, they need to lean on your physiologically more developed brain. If you, as the adult with the physiologically fully developed brain, revert into the panic side of your brain, you will function at the same level as your teenager, which is not going to help anybody. So mindfulness, yoga, things that help you downregulate and things that help you regulate your own nervous system are going to be the things that help you maintain that equilibrium, or closer to equilibrium, when things hit the fan with your teenager. So
Yeah, that makes
so
total
that's where
sense.
that allows you to do the nodding and smiling. So they're leaning on our brains big time to help them through whatever they're helping them through. And then there's also the connection piece, that if you respond like a 15-year-old, you're not gonna strengthen connection.
Yeah.
So that nodding and smiling, phrases like, I always use tell me more, or I wouldn't have thought about it that way, I'm curious, which then goes into the curiosity again, right? To get them talking more. The other aspect of it, not only are they leaning on our brains, but because their brains are not yet fully formed, they don't process things in the same way that we do. So it may take them longer to get the points out in the first place. So if we're jumping all over what they have to say as soon as they say it, so many parents are like, my kid's like, that's not what I said. It's like, no, those are literally the words that just came out of your mouth. And they're like, well, that's not what I meant. And you want to be like, then use the freaking words you mean. They can't necessarily from a physiological perspective because their brains aren't there yet. And it's really hard if you've got a kiddo who is ahead of the curve physically in their development because they look older. And then we naturally have expectations that match what they look like that aren't necessarily fair because we can't see the brain.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into that aside from just kids being kids.
Yeah.
So anyway,
totally.
so then the E is explore and educate. You know, as an example, if you've got, you know, a kiddo comes home pregnant earlier than you would like, or they're like, I don't want to go to college. And you're like, what do you mean you don't want to go to college? Everyone in your family is doctors and lawyers. You're going to college. And this kid's like, no, really, that's not the next best step. Take a step back and go, all right, let's explore. What are the options?
I love that.
Educate yourself. What do you not know? What else is out there? One of my favorite questions is, what else? You know, what else could be true? But then that also ties into the C, the next C, which is challenge your truths or
That's a good one.
curiosity, right? And this again is one where sometimes our expectations of what will be for the kids in our world come in, whether it's our expectations of their behavior from our own religious and moral perspective, our expectations of what comes next for them in, you know, educationally based upon the culture in which they've been raised. I certainly see that in families that have immigrated to the U.S. to give their kids options that maybe didn't exist in their home countries. They're here, they're like, education is number one. We are here for you to have educational opportunities, and you've got a kid who hates school, right? Like there's some very real tension that can come out of that, of, you know, how do we find these opportunities that maybe aren't a traditional four-year school? Or you've got a kiddo who says, I don't want to go into that kind of debt. You know, what are my options, right? So that's where the E of exploring and going, what else could be true? And what do I believe to be true in challenging the truths? Is my truth and your truth, number one, are they two different truths? Number two, are they mutually exclusive? And can they both be true at the same time? Or can my beliefs change? You know, we see this a lot in the realm of like LGBTQIA, for example, right? Where you've got a family where they have beliefs about what is right, what is wrong, what is sinful, what is acceptable, and whatnot. And then they have somebody in their family who comes out as being part of that community, and they go, wait a second, that like it forces them to take a step back. Or perhaps there are some beliefs about the race that your kid is going to marry into, or their partner, or something like that, right? And so going back and going, wow, this is what I've always believed, and I love my child who's presenting something different to me. And that one's hard. That's where one of the ones that in retrospect, I think my mom struggled with a lot. Yeah. And it's challenging.
Oh, for sure. But our children come here to give us the greatest challenges if we have them, you know. I feel like all relationships that we're in, especially the ones closest to us, are, you know, they're not meant to be easy because that's how we grow. And our children push our buttons the most. And, you know, I was just thinking too of, I'm not going to say who, but like, you know, when you spoke about, you know, challenging those beliefs as parents with the LGBTQ, like I know someone who, you know, the father was so afraid, so paranoid that would happen. And then, hey, guess what happened? He found out one of his children, you know, was, yeah. And it's like those experiences, I think, are meant to happen so that we can question those beliefs and really look at our truth. And I love that that's part of your foundations, because exploring that and really digging deeper, like, why am I afraid of this? Or why do I believe and have these expectations for my children to be a certain way? Is it because I have these expectations for me? Were these my expectations, or were they put onto me from my own parents, And I think really, parenting from and I'm learning this so much too, because I wasn't technically parented, with the freedom to choose and be a certain way. I feel like I had a lot of, no, I don't want to say control, but there was a lot of expectations, like, put on me as a little girl. But I realize as a mom now that it's so important to let them be who they are without trying to change them. They need safe boundaries, they need
Absolutely.
guidance. That's guaranteed. But in order for them to explore and just like not be controlled is so vital for them finding who they are. And not even finding, because it's not like who they are is outside of them, but it's really remembering they already know
And
who they are.
exploring
They're
them.
more touched in than we are. But it's remembering.
And I think that right there is a really important point, is challenging your truths about what you know about your child or your partner or yourself even, right? And going, no, what do they say is true about them? You know,
Listening.
and listen and letting them express some of that, or not some, but express that in ways that maybe you're not comfortable with. That's where the take your time comes in. This is not an
Mm.
overnight process, especially if you're already recognizing that some of the threads of connection have frayed. They didn't fray overnight, and they're not necessarily going to be repaired overnight. It takes time and it takes little steps, and it's really important to recognize. I had a therapist, one of my early therapists, said to me, in the human experience, we end up in a dance, and she used her hands like this, and she's like, you get two people who get used to dancing a certain way, and then all of a sudden one of them changes the dance pattern and they're up here, and the other person kind of like wigs out, like, oh my god, they did something different, right? So to your point of, if you're a parent or a human who tends to react just very quickly, fly off the handle kind of personality, when you make the decision that you want to change that and you start reacting differently, it will throw the people around you for a loop, because your behavior up until now has told them a lot about you.
Mm.
And they expect a certain reaction. And then when they suddenly don't get it, they're going to be like, dude, what just happened to mom or dad or brother or whoever? And they're going to get potentially a little like wiggy wiggy.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, who are you and what have you done with my whoever you are to them, right? So be prepared for the fact that as you navigate this, when you start changing how you show up, sometimes it makes the engagement a little bit more challenging in the short run.
Mm.
It's like if you haven't gone to the gym for a few years and all of a sudden you go back, those first few workouts hurt
Oh yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Okay? It's the same thing.
I
It,
love
it takes time.
I love the metaphor you give about the dance. It just makes me think too how like the way we live, we all have a perception and idea of who we think the people in our lives are. We have these ideas of, my mom, this is the person she is. Like she has these
Mm-hmm.
characteristics and this is my perception of her. But then she also has a perception of herself. And the thing is, like you say, whenever somebody starts to do something a little bit different outside of, the ordinary or the perception that people have of us, it can throw them off guard a little bit and make them feel a little bit uncomfortable. Oh, wait, this role who my
Totally.
mother has been playing my whole life is no longer playing this person. What's going on? Like it makes you feel uncomfortable because this idea of that you have of them is no longer fitting into your box. And so what I love
Mm-hmm.
about these situations though is when people change or start to grow, then it also kind of makes us look at ourselves and say, okay, what areas in our life can I change and grow too, or let go of
Absolutely.
these ideas or beliefs that I have of who they are, because who are we to decide who others are in our lives? We can have ideas of who
Absolutely.
we think they are, but that's not true.
Well, and so you mentioned you had your perception of mother. Mother has perception of mother. Let's
Hmm.
also not forget that mother has perception of you.
Right, right,
And perception is reality, right? So and then you have perception of you. So there are
right.
four different versions of reality
Exactly.
between two humans. Like, whoa, let's talk about
Whoa.
complexity, shall we?
Totally.
So the take your time is recognizing that things aren't going to change overnight necessarily. But take your time also ties into the final end, which is nurture, in that relationship takes time. Relationship takes intention.
Mhm.
You know, um, I said to my husband yesterday, in the afternoon, I go, "Hey, honey, do you remember what today is?" That's probably a really loaded question and really not a fair question to ask. But it happened to be the anniversary of our first date, or the date that we met online. So we chatted for a few months online. It was like the day that we actually finally met. And I was like, "Cool, you want to take me to dinner?" Because we haven't, like, life has just been kind of lifing lately, and we haven't gone out to dinner. We used to go out to dinner a lot. And we were like, yeah, we'll go out. He didn't get off work until 8 o'clock, so it was a late dinner. But it was time. And it was time away from the computer, time away from the television, mostly. We went to a place that had football games on, but still most of the time away from the television. Time mostly away from the phones, but just time together. So scheduling that time with somebody else.
Yeah.
Whether it's, mother-daughter dates once a month, if you want to go do like a mani-pedi, or just, hey, let's go for a 10-minute walk.
Yeah.
Or I know a gentleman who has Talk It Out Tuesdays with his kids. Every Tuesday, he and one of his kids, each of them, I believe, individually, they just get in the car and they just go for a drive.
Nice.
And that is scheduled time. And in that time frame, he has also set it up, and I've heard this from a lot of families, where they're like, you can tell me anything in this conversation. There's I'm not saying there's no punishment. If you done screwed up, like, there might be punishment. But this is my time that I'm really going to be cognizant of paying attention to you, listening to you, hearing your perspective. And also, like, that side to side can be really good. My understanding, I've heard from a few different professionals lately that that's particularly important for boys.
Side to side.
Not have the confrontational side.
Okay.
I think that's what they said. Anyway, I think it's good for humans, because then it's like, I'm on your team. I'm not your opponent.
Yeah, you feel like equals.
Right. So setting that time, taking that time, dedicating that time is the other side of take your time.
Scheduling is so important too. Like, even as new parents, like, it can be so overwhelming and all consuming. And
Sure.
sometimes it's common for parents to, like, lose that connection early on when there's just so many responsibilities with little ones around. And scheduling is the
Absolutely.
only way that you can find that space, whether to reconnect with, whoever it is, your friends or your partner, your spouse. And it's so vital, to really take that time. And I love that, the examples you gave too of the parents scheduling with their little ones, and like, the little ones are probably excited for that. Like, hey, on Tuesday I get to go for a drive with daddy, and he's just all devoted to me. No phone, no work. Like, that's exciting. And it also shows them, it teaches them the importance of quality of time too, right? And that connection piece is there as well.
Absolutely. So then the I is innovate. How can we come up with new ideas? And this can be really good with teenagers, or with partners, with older kiddos, at least. Although, I mean, I can see it potentially working with younger kiddos, depending on the kiddo. If you keep coming up against the same challenges, like, I'm really tired of having this same argument, for example. I'm really tired of having the argument over whether or not you get your laundry done on your laundry day. Like, some families will be like, hey, this child's day, you're responsible for your laundry, and your day to do laundry is Tuesday, because then the other kiddo's day is Wednesday, and mom's day is Thursday, and dad's day is Friday. Again, speaking in heteronormative terms. And we don't do laundry on the weekends because we go do fun stuff. Well, if you end up running out of underwear, that's going to suck for you, right? Like, I'm tired of having this same conversation about you not getting your laundry done on your day. Let's get creative. Actually, my best friend did this a few years ago with one of her kiddos. She was tired of having the chores conversation. She's like, I'm fresh out of ideas. And she had grounded her son from YouTube, from watching his whatever his videos were. She's like, okay, you can have YouTube back with one goal. You go figure out a solution to the chores conversation, because I'm done. I'm done trying to be the one coming up with ideas. And that was like, she obviously had hit her breaking point. But that's an example of, like, including them. And the older they get, the more you get them involved in decisions, the more agency you can give them safely, right? Depending on the decision, the more likely they are to want to engage. And truthfully, it's the same thing with littles, but we have larger potential consequences when the kids are older in a lot of cases, So let's get creative. Let's innovate. What are some new ways that we can go about doing this? What are your solutions? Help them be the solution to the challenge, or let them be part of the solution, So that's innovate. O is own your own story. And this goes back to you recognizing, hey, as a parent, my kid pushes every last one of the buttons I didn't even know I had. Right? I had a coach, I think it was the first life coach I ever did any work with, who described a situation like take like your entire history, all your experiences, all your emotional baggage, everything, and imagine that it's a like a washcloth that has been soaked in gasoline, and then a circumstance with another human, completely unrelated to the years of baggage that you've accumulated. Because let's be clear, we all have baggage, right? We all have that gasoline-soaked washcloth. This other circumstance with our partner, with our boss, with our kid, with the woman who cuts us off on the road, whatever it is, right, is the match that gets lit and ignites the gasoline-soaked rag. Yes, maybe this other individual did something that was inappropriate. Perhaps they did cut you off. Perhaps it was their fault that they caused the accident. Perhaps your kid did make an unwise decision. They are not responsible for the entirety of the gasoline that has been put upon the wash rag, right? You have to own what you bring to the situation in terms of, as you were indicating earlier, how you react to the situation. We're still responsible for the way that we choose to react. And why is this so triggering for me? Whether it's the way your kiddo talks to you, whether it's the decisions that your kiddo is making, whatever it is. Why are you so furious when your kiddo misses curfew? Is it because you feel disrespected because you set a boundary or you set a rule and your kid is violating it? Is it that rule that's being violated that's pissing you off? Or is it the fact that you don't feel you're heard in many arenas of your life and now your kid isn't hearing you? And you're bringing this lifetime of not feeling heard into the situation with your kid. Right? Like you said, the kids are mirrors. Even if it's not, like I have kids in my life who are not my biological offspring. They piss me off. Why? Maybe they're trying to be jerks. Okay, like there is that. Absolutely, okay? But more than likely, I'm bringing something to the situation, and I'm bringing meaning to the situation that has nothing to do with the other person. So owning your own story is a big one.
That's huge. Yeah. And that takes courage and, to be fully responsible for our life and respond in a way that is aware, like conscious and aware. And I feel like it's so easy to project. Like a lot of the times we project onto our children our stuff that's not healed. And it's not, we're not doing it on purpose, obviously, but like it's really deep. It can be really deep stuff and a lot of baggage, like you said. And so it really takes stepping up, to really own your story and imagine if more families could do that. The examples we'd be setting.
I navigate this with my husband at times. We've been together 22 years now. And there are times that he'll be like, well, you said such and such. And I'll be like, nope, that's the bullies in your head that are helping you to interpret what I said as such and such. I didn't say that, nor did I mean that in any fashion. And that's just one example of like where I see that coming up in my world, or, I've got a friend who's like, wow, that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or having people around you, if you're on this personal development journey of how can I show up in a more connected fashion with the people around me, it's a personal development journey without question. Having them call you and be like, dude, that's your wheelbarrow of stuff that you're bringing to the situation that has nothing to do with what's actually at hand right now.
Totally.
So it's a hard one.
And then you're owning your stuff too, because you're not accepting that projection, right? You're kind of like giving it back and saying, that's your stuff. That's not my stuff. Thank you, but no, thank you.
Exactly. 100%. And then at the end is nurture. Taking the time to again, taking the time. You see how like they're all interwoven. Nurturing yourself, nurturing your relationship with, if you have a greater power in your paradigm, nurturing your relationship there, nurturing yourself with your body. Like I got up and I did some yoga this morning as I was like, my body, I'm not nurturing. I've been spending a lot of time at the desk lately. and I'm feeling it in my body. And if I'm feeling it in my body, I'm not going to show up as well as I'd like for the people around me. So how can I do that? How can I nurture the people that I love? And again, there's so many different ways that we can do that we've talked about, like creating the safe space, taking the time, innovating, like that all kind of falls into nurture. But a lot of times the self-care side of things doesn't happen, especially for moms. We still live in a culture where moms are our default parents. If you have a partner who is involved and participatory and supportive, all the better. And if you don't, it becomes that much more challenging when you have to do all the things for the little young adults in your world, but taking that time for yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes or just do some breathing at a stoplight. Involve your kids in that. Like, hey, I recognize I'm a little bit dysregulated right now. At the stoplight, we're going to pause the music and we're going to take 5 deep breaths.
I love that. Yeah.
Something like that. And that's showing them, it's demonstrating to them some of that personal regulation too.
Totally. I'm getting excited as you talk about this foundation because I have a little date with the spa later this afternoon, and it doesn't happen very often. But, it just makes me thinking too, as a new mom, I had this idea because it's an adjustment, right? Like as a parent, like you're totally learning to live with these new little humans in your lives. And so I remember like I would try to take every break I could while she was, sleeping to either like clean the house or have the house in order, do the laundry, do the dishes. And then when I realized that like I just need to also take time for myself, and that was just as important. I remember I would, get the yoga mat out and do some yoga, but then like my daughter has been such a sensitive sleeper ever since she was born, and oftentimes my yoga would be interrupted. So a part of me was like, I'm not going to bother trying anymore because what's the point? I start 5 minutes later, she's up, I need to go attend to her. But now I'm learning the importance of not separating and isolating these acts of nurturance, because I realized like I'm showing her now. We have 2 yoga mats, we pop them both open, and I'll go do downward dog, she'll do it right next to me, and she's learning, just as much the importance of taking care of our bodies, and we do it together. And the thing is, though, it may not be as efficient as it would be me doing it myself, but at the same time, it's fun, it's different. I'm adjusting, I'm doing this self-care routine with a new little one in my life. And it's the same thing with the laundry. When you were talking about that, I was thinking how in other cultures that are not Western, chores are not such a big deal, because from little beings, like they are just expected as part of the lifestyle to help their parents.
Absolutely.
And that may look a little messier, as you fold the laundry, your little toddler will come and unfold it, but at least they're wanting to help, and they're coming from a place of, authenticity rather than, oh, I need to do my chore today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if it becomes part of the pattern early on, it's just the way that, again, that's that safe space. It's what are the consistent things that you do? How do you show up on a daily basis? And honestly, having these conversations with families that are younger, like yours, makes a big difference, because if you can set some of these patterns into existence as the kids are younger, it makes it easier.
For sure, yeah.
Necessarily easy, depending, right? But easier as the kids get older.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. It's a beautiful acronym, by the way. I'm curious to know, is if the way that you had like created it, is it kind of like, does it fall like one after another? Like, do you need to create a safe space to begin with, or can you just start and dive in anywhere? Or is there one that is more important that you would recommend for parents to start?
They are so interwoven.
I
It is
see that.
absolutely not linear. Even as we were talking, I was like, well, this jumps to here and this jumps
Right,
back to
right,
here.
right.
It's like, I often say it's kind of like the ball of yarn that the cat got to. It's just kind of a mishmash. I would say whichever one you feel most uncomfortable with is probably the place that you want to start exploring.
Interesting.
Because that's probably the one that, for some reason, there's some resistance to. There's a disconnect for you, or perhaps it wasn't something that you experienced, and therefore you're not sure how to model it. Yeah.
So the one they're most comfortable with, or could it be the one they're more uncomfortable with?
The one that they're most uncomfortable
Oh,
with.
uncomfortable. Okay, I thought I heard the opposite.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
Sorry,
makes
no.
total sense. Yeah, the one that
Yeah.
scares them the most, probably. Yeah.
Well, and then be prepared for the fact that as you navigate one, another one's going to come up, and you're going to be like, oh, I didn't think I was so good at it, or I thought I was better at that than maybe I am, or that felt more comfortable now that I'm unpeeling. It's kind of like the, Shrek, like there are many layers of the onion to the ogre,
Yeah.
like an ogre's like an onion with all the layers. I think it's kind of like that as we navigate and we explore one of them, something else comes unraveled a little bit. I see that in the test prep world. A lot of things are interwoven, but as we really focus on one arena, something else can fall off a little bit.
For sure.
Or like, I mean, you see that in real life. You focus but more on, um, time for yourself. You're going to have somewhat less time for other people in your lives because you're taking time for yourself.
And that's
So
okay.
it's coming back and forth, and I don't know that balance is really the key. I think it's focus on what needs focus now, and then as that need changes, change the focus, change the
I love that.
attention. But I think
It
the
sounds
key is to be intentional about it.
Yes. And it sounds very organic, like really going with the flow and kind of seeing what's coming up for you, whatever foundation you're in or exploring at the time. Yeah.
Right.
I have a couple questions for you before we close
Yeah.
off here, Clarissa. I'd love to know because, you speak about how like it's so important to emphasize that connection doesn't happen in isolation. And this is the whole point why you created the Parent Tween Connection. It truly takes a village. And I'm learning that now. Like it's so interesting because we moved out west for conscious community across Canada. We were searching for conscious community, and that was our question because we were just lacking connection in the big city. We were missing that piece. And then we found it, and then it's so funny because we birthed our daughter out west, and then we had these close connection of friends and circle and community around us, but then at 8 months we moved back closer to our grandparents because we were missing that family connection, but yet we still miss that community and friend. Like it's so different, and there's so much to it, and it truly does take a village. So I'd love to ask you, how have you seen community in the Western culture, or perhaps the lack of it, really impact families?
I think it's certainly as families have moved in all kinds of different directions. There are definitely a lot more disconnects that are happening. I think technology can help that. With Zoom and FaceTime and things like that, giving us the opportunity to connect with people at a
Yeah.
distance. My husband and I are certainly, we lived in California, and both of our families were on the East Coast, so we've certainly had that. But I think we create the community that we need along the way.
Love that
Or
answer.
we find the community, and for some of us, we move away from family for a reason. Okay, like depending. But I think there's also the family that we create, and I think if we're intentional about that, again, I think it comes back to the intention of looking for what we need. We are not, as you said, we are not meant to live in isolation. Community helps. I mean, if you look again at non-Western cultures, or even native cultures here in North America, there were tribes that they identify with the tribe. It wasn't a nuclear family wasn't a thing. It was all the women together raised all of the children, and all of the men went hunting together, because you're not going to take down a bull elk by yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
and so I think there are certainly some challenges that we face without having those same kind of inherent communities. But I think the bigger issue is that in those nuclear families, I don't think we necessarily have the same kind of community within the nuclear family that we used to have, because as the adults aren't feeling the connection or the community, and therefore they're not able to replicate that in the family in the same way. And I think that that's really where it starts.
Yeah, I love that answer. I really love that answer. And creating the community, and also that connection starts with us, because if we don't feel connected to ourselves, how can we connect to those around us?
Mm-hmm.
And I love how you spoke about, technology being a big help for that, especially when you're not physically close to certain, people in your lives. But, and also during these times can be a huge distraction, because, we see families
Mm-hmm.
also, like even at restaurants with little ones on the devices, and then not even connecting at the table out in public. And to me, that just, it
Mm-hmm.
breaks my heart. And I understand as a new mom, like when you put those devices in front of them, they just quiet right down, they calm right down. So I understand for a lot of parents, perhaps who have really, active little ones, or what have you, like it's easy, it gives you a break. But at the same time, it's, what are we teaching them even when we're on our devices, more than communicating with them? Like, are we showing them that the device is more important than them? So it's
Sure.
really, I feel like using these technologies more consciously is super
Sure.
important. Yeah.
Well, and again, it comes back to the intention, I think. You know, Again, like last night, my husband and I went out for dinner. We put our phones aside. Yeah, we looked at them for a couple of things here and there, but we actually talked a lot of times during the week we have opposite schedules where, I'm building a business. I'm in a huge growth phase right now, so it's taking a lot of time. We communicate more by text than anything else sometimes. But like, I've also really been working to be more intentional about in the evenings, if he's home and he's watching TV and I still have work I need to do, going and working in the space where he's watching TV. Even though the TV distracts me, being in the same space with him opens up opportunity for connection, even though I'm still working.
Mm.
I can, as long as it's not work, it's going to be a huge, like the TV is going to be a huge distraction, but again, it's being intentional about being in the same space with somebody and taking the time and innovating and nurturing. Again, it comes back to those foundations.
Yeah, no, I love those are awesome foundations. I love those core pillars that you've created. And I want to just finally discuss too, like bridging, parents and professionals. It's also like the same that we're doing with like Heart Vision. We are creating an education association, not to compete with others who are already doing it, but to really be bridge builders because we need less competition in the world and more collaboration and cooperation. So your work uniquely bridges, parents with educators and families and professionals and coaches. So, why is collaboration such an important, thing during these times, especially across roles?
Because number one, ain't no one of us that knows everything about everything. Let's just
Got
put that
that
right out
right.
there to start with, right? Like, none of us has all of the answers. And even, the parenting coaches that I talk to, or the people who are accustomed to working with teenagers, they have their own kids and they're like, oh my goodness, what the actual heck is going on here with my own children? I thought I knew about children, right? So even for the folks that do this for a living, they still have a need to find people who know or who can see differently because they're not in the nuclear family relationship. But then on the certainly on the professional side of things, I number one, there are more families that need support than any one individual will ever be able to offer. So like, in our professional network, we're not like a one per industry. And I tell folks, like, if you're talking to somebody who does the same thing, great. Figure out where you're different, where you're unique, and understand who you're a better professional for and who they're a better professional for. And recognize that if you send somebody to somebody else to because they're a better fit as the help, you're doing more good in the long run. And that good will come back to you.
Oh yeah.
You know, but I mean, certainly in business, Zuckerberg and didn't build Amazon by himself, and Musk didn't build Tesla by himself. None of us gets out of here, or none of us gets anywhere by ourselves. And so, a lot of us who choose the entrepreneurial route, a lot of times we think like, but it's mine and I got to do it, and whether it's ego because it's mine, or whether it's, but I'm the only one and I can't afford to hire anybody, right? Is another very real thing as an entrepreneur. Um, find people you can collaborate with, find people you can share with, hey, so honestly, I know somebody the other day who bartered with a rancher. She's a business coach and she's going to be able to give them some business coaching support, and they're going to give her X amount of meat in payment because they can afford to give her a certain amount of meat, but they don't necessarily have the dollars to pay her. Right?
Right.
So it's like, why wouldn't you collaborate like that? Why wouldn't you look for
Totally.
win-win situations? Like, I just can't conceive of why you wouldn't do that.
I
And
think we
then,
were, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, no, please finish your thought there.
Um, I also think there's something to be said in a completely selfish fashion that if, I still do some SAT and ACT coaching. But if I can say to my students who are telling me that they've got test anxiety, hey, I know somebody who can help you with that. It helps them have a more successful experience with what I'm offering them. And then if that person can say, oh, your parent is navigating Alzheimer's, I know somebody who can help with that, and we can make their lives easier or better or healthier or whatever, right? More positive. The phrase I always use is the tighter of a web that we weave as professionals, the more we can help families and the more families we help.
I love that.
Why wouldn't we?
Yeah. Yeah, we're not meant to wear all the hats our own. And when you were talking about the example that you gave for the exchanging with the coaching and the meat, I think it was, it just makes me think how we were meant to live as human beings, rather than this fiat currency. Like imagine a gift economy where we all were expressing and sharing our unique gifts, because not one of us has the same, talents and gifts that we came here with. We're all so different and unique, and we were meant to live and cooperate and harmonize together by sharing, and giving in that way. And I love that idea of the bartering and the gift economy. It's a beautiful way, because a lot of times too, sometimes as we grow up, we suppress these gifts and we forget what they even are. When we're children, we
Absolutely.
just live so authentically and we're playful and we just are it. But then as we grow up with these ideas and expectations of who we think we are or should be, we kind of forget, like, oh, what is my unique gift? And usually it's something that lights us up. But a lot of the times too, a lot of people think we can't pursue it any longer because it doesn't pay the bills or it doesn't make us money.
Right.
And yeah,
Well, and I was thinking, the gift of meat in that arena doesn't pay the rent. So, like, they're definitely, we do live in an economy, unless you go completely off grid and
exactly.
homesteading and such. Like, that's a different conversation. But for those of us who are still part of the economic, system that exists, we can't totally do that.
Need to play the game still.
But here's the other thing. If you go back to, I think it was How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. The more good you bring into somebody else's life, the more they're going to remember you.
Mhm.
And the more good that will ultimately come back to you. It's called karma in my paradigm. You put good out, good comes back. So if I
Totally.
say, hey, I'm not the test prep coach for you, let me refer you to somebody else, how many people say that instead of, oh, yeah, let me take your money? You know? So,
Yeah,
anyway,
no,
we could
I
obviously
love
talk
that.
forever.
No, thanks for sharing that. I have a couple more questions. So what would you say to a parent who feels like perhaps they've just missed their chance?
It's never too late. It's never too late. Own your own story. Identify what you need to do for you. Because at the end of the day, you're the only one that you can control anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you choose how you show up. Yeah, you might have had some stuff go down in your life. Yeah, you may have had some trauma. Yeah, you may have had some challenges. Every one of us has our stuff. Some more than others, some more traumatic than others. I'm not going to take away from anything that folks have experienced, but own how it's impacted you and choose. If you're breathing, you have a choice.
Yeah,
Choose
no,
how you
thank
show
you.
up.
And finally, how has this work transformed you as a human?
Oh gosh. Here's what I'll tell you. If you want to go into owning your own business of any variety, whether it's mission driven or not, have a therapist on speed dial and have a business coach on speed dial, because you're not going to make it through without that. Not successfully, in my estimation, anyway. Um, this has pushed me absolutely to my limit as a human being. I've also had some other things that are very, very closely linked to the work that I do, but still very personal in nature, that have come down. That your personal life impacts your professional life, and your professional impacts your personal, especially when you're living a legacy and you're building something that, as I believe, is my legacy. Um,
Mm.
like, I am who I am because of the work that I'm creating. Um, it has pushed my buttons. This is my baby. It has pushed my buttons. It has shown every uh I don't want to say weakness, but every area of improvement, every opportunity for improvement that could have come up. It has pushed me, and really a lot of what drives me is helping families avoid getting to the point where they say all hope is lost.
Mm.
The ship has sailed. Um, until one of you is no longer in this form and you can't impact the relationship between two humans on this planet in this space-time continuum, it's never too late. And so I'm always looking at, like, how can I improve, how can I help other people avoid a lot of the lost years and
Yeah.
a lot of the negativity. Like I said, I spent a lot of years angry. I really would have liked to not spend those years angry. I wish that um, some of this had come about earlier and I might have been driven to do it earlier, but there's also divine timing, so I can't control that.
Totally. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it truly is such a service, in this world, especially, when it's coming from your heart and it's so authentic and you're just wanting to help others, have an easier time with their lives and their relationships and connecting authentically. And I think it's so amazing that you don't have your children of your own, at least not the humankind, and you're still
Right.
able to understand and have compassion because you do work with children, and children are children, teens are teens, tweens are teens, and you can understand, what they're going through, on their more personal levels and in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So where
And
can
it's
people,
I was gonna
sorry.
say, and it actually took me a while to get there because for a long time I was like, I'm not a mom who's gonna listen to anything that I can share with them. No, it's because I'm not a mom that
Hmm.
actually makes some of the experiences that I've had go, hey, look, pay attention,
Yeah.
and I can look at some of it without the encumbrance of the emotional connection with the kid or the emotional baggage that you develop with your kid
Right.
because you're going to.
Right.
So
No,
anyway,
that's
sorry,
awesome.
I
It's a
interrupted
blessing
you.
to have them, to have you in their lives. No, that's okay. So I just wanted to ask, like, where could people find your work and also the PDF that you mentioned at the beginning?
Sure, it's Parent Twin Connection everywhere. So it's PARENTWEEN connection. Right now, much of what we have for support is geared toward families of kiddos between the ages of 10 and 20. Although we are looking at expanding that this year. We're just, there's a lot of pokers in the fire. I don't know exactly what our timing is going to be, but a lot of the support that we offer, we want to expand to younger years. So stay tuned. And
Exciting.
so that's our website. We are Parent Twin Connection on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest of late. I'm exploring Pinterest a little bit more. So any of those places you can find us.
And when you say we and us, do you have a business partner?
Uh, Largely me, myself, and I. But when I also say we, I've got, we've got our professional network of folks who are vetted, federally background checked, reference checked. We've got folks in Canada, we've got folks in Australia, we've got connections internationally to professionals as well. So, Parent Twin Connection is kind of, I look at it as like the hub so that people can come in through us to find the professionals that they need for support.
Wonderful. I love that.
And so, like our communities. Um, and I was going to say something else, and I don't know where my brain just went on it.
That's okay. Maybe it'll come back. But yeah, that's so awesome. I really love that you're creating, and it's just such a blessing for people to be able to find this, at this time in the world. And so, is there anything else that you would like to share before we close off today?
I'll throw a plug out. One of the initiatives that we're taking in the new year is actually to take our family community, which is called the Parent Tween Village, to entities that are looking for fundraising opportunities. Basically, it's a membership, and so we're working to looking to partner with schools, sports teams, moms clubs, entities that have children, kids or moms or dads. It's just I say moms more because moms tend to be more involved, who are looking for unique perpetual fundraisers. Basically, easy description is as their community members join Parent Tween Village, we will give a portion of their membership fees back on a quarterly basis as long as families stay with us.
Oh, wow, that's a really
So it's
beautiful.
it's a different idea. I mean, I'm not saying don't sell the chocolate bars and the advertising and the signs on the back of the stadium. Those all have their place. But I think it's a unique approach. I think it's a supportive approach to helping families and giving back at the same time. So we're going to have an information session on that on January 7th. That's on the events page on our calendar. So for anyone who is tuning, or on our website rather, the events page on our website, anyone who's tuning in, if you would like to join us for that, we'd love to have you. We'll have more information then.
Awesome. Can people just tune in, or do they have to sign up for it?
It's going to be via Zoom, so we are going to ask folks to join us so that we can connect with them and follow up with them as appropriate. And then I'll have the website or the webpage up hopefully by Monday,
Okay, awesome.
so that if they're interested but they can't make that, they can still join us or they can get more
Okay, and
information.
and all that information they'll find on parenttweenconnection.com, and I'll also have that link
Got it.
posted under the show notes.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you,
That's all
Clarissa,
I
so
got.
much
Yeah.
for this beautiful conversation. Well, that was absolutely
Thank you.
amazing. I appreciate all the little tidbits and goodies that you shared with us and reminding families that connection is totally something that we cultivate, over time. Doesn't happen overnight, and it's not about fixing or controlling, but really just being and with whatever's coming up at the time and noticing and observing, like you say, and being present most importantly. I love the acronym that you have for connection, the 10-letter word that you created and well that you chose and just the foundations that you shared, really diving deep into them today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and for everyone who is listening, please be reminded that this conversation is to support you in finding your way. And, it's never too late. And, to find connection with yourself and also with those who you love around you. So before we close off, I'm just going to invite our little one to say a farewell to us all today. Thank you so much, Clarissa.
Thank you, Julia.
The moon is right, the spirit's up. We're here tonight, and that's enough. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. The party's on, the feeling's here.
We wish you a
Have a new year. Have a new year.
Happy New Year. Can you say Merry Christmas, everybody?
Yeah.
Say it.
Have a new year.
Bye bye.